Clear, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. All individuals and all societies are sinful. It's just a matter of degree. So we don't think that, or we wouldn't try to prove that, say, our religion is better than yours because we don't do certain sins, and say you do, or vice versa. We're not trying to say that.
Well, first of all, you said that repressive Islamic societies, if you are referring to the political societies, those have nothing to do with Islam, and you talked about the openness of the Western societies. Now, can you give me one single society throughout history, other than the days of the Crusaders, that had applied the principles of Christianity, and would you consider it as a Christian nation? One single one?
I just explained to you that we don't deal with societies. We're talking about individuals. So maybe you didn't hear me. I said the Christian is talking about a distinction between politics and religion, and so you have to evaluate in the lives of those who are following Jesus, that is real Christians and not people who call themselves or who are called by others Christians.
Okay, Dr. Jeffary has a point, and he's been trying to make it now almost 20 minutes.
I only just want to comment, it's probably too late now, about the idea of prophets and sin. The idea in Islam is a little bit different than it is in Christianity. It's, like Dr. Jamal Badawi said, prophets may make mistakes, but not on the level of, as the Bible shows, prophets making mistakes. When a prophet makes a mistake, I think you could probably relate, a Christian could definitely relate to what I'm about to say. When the Canaanite came to Jesus, Canaanite woman came to Jesus and asked him for help. And he said, he answered her, I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And then he answered again, it's not fair to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Then he changed his mind about that and helped her. Similarly, the Muslims, as the brother mentioned, have a situation where a blind man comes to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, for help. And he sort of frowns because he's desperately trying to convey this message to some disbelievers. And then he, Quran corrects him, and as a matter of fact, he always upheld that as an example. That's how Muslims conceive of things. A prophet may make a mistake of that sort, but it's never, as Dr. Jamal Badawi said, an intentional rebellion against the will of God or a defiling act. And, you know, I think if we look at that passage in the New Testament, both Muslims and Christians will agree that, you know, that was probably not best for Jesus to say that, and he might have been trying to convey a message. But the fact that he corrected himself on that, that could be seen in the same sort of light. That, you know, it's not really a sin, it's a mistake, and he probably did better after that when he corrected his behavior.
He didn't correct himself. He helped her, and if you look at the context, you'll see that the woman was not offended, and she understands that here's Jesus taking a woman seriously, which was really quite remarkable in that society. Normally, a religious teacher would not even deal with a woman, because she was not expected to understand spiritual things, but she gives a response, and there's an interplay that takes place, and we see the heart of Jesus in blessing her.
Does that mean that he continued to hold the belief that other than the Israelites are dogs? Is this what you're suggesting?
He's showing to her, and she understands apparently, or else she wouldn't have come to a Jew in the first place. Well, she understands something about the Jews because they're neighbors, and so she comes to him, and she's asking for help. And in the Jewish view, you know, the Gentiles were dogs, and so he's showing to her what the Jewish view is. But at the same time, she understands from her response in the context. It's inappropriate for some person 2,000 years later to say, well, this is what it meant, or this was what really happened. The woman in that context, she knows what was happening, and she was not offended. And so there's no evidence there of a mistake, and Jesus specifically says, who of you condemns me of a sin? He challenges anyone to present anything that he did that was sinful. And that would be very arrogant if he, in his own conscience, knew that he had committed sin. But of course, the Quran itself calls him the pure. He's supposed to be the sinless prophet, in your belief.
Yes, well, I mean, that's your, okay, you're interpreting it in a way and rationalizing in a way that you could accept. I'm just saying that, similarly, when the Muslims see that example in the Quran, they don't understand that as a rebellion against God. They see that as a choice he made, and then he was corrected and took a different posture after that.
Why call
the point of it is the point of it is it's not a direct rebellion, but to call a woman, refer to her people as dogs, I think most of us would think of that as not a very nice thing to do.
Maybe some would, but she didn't.
And even many a Christian commentator has commented on the same verse and made the same remark.
What did she do, by the way, to show acceptance? Can you tell us, what did she do, the woman, to show that she's happy he said it?
Well, and then he blesses her, and she gets what she
No, I'm asking what she did, not what he did.
She's not offended.
I think it boils down, quite frankly, to one thing. That you want to give yourself a right that you don't want to give to others. When you asked about them, I didn't just make an argument. We made an argument on linguistic basis, on the context of the Quran, on historical facts, and you say, no, you're trying to interpret it to, cool it down. Yet, you give yourself the right to use the term dogs referring to people, which is a very offensive term, regardless whether she was offended or not. And to say, no, this is not a sin. I think the proper way, to me, looking at it, that, all right, it's a human mistake on the part of Jesus the human. It's a human mistake on the part of Prophet Muhammad, in his giving preference to the rich people rather than the poor person at that moment for a good purpose. So why dispute about it? Why not give each other the same right rather than just try to make exclusive demands on it? Secondly, before Dr. Martison leaves, I just wanted 2 points, because he said there is nothing in the Quran about this idea of serving rather than being served. No, it is in the Quran, in fact. First of all, when the Quran states, إِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَى مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَمْوَالَهُم بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. Allah has purchased from the believer their property and their lives, that they will be rewarded for paradise. It means that it is a life of sacrifice. The life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in case there was any indirect interpreted insinuation, he did not come to be served. He came to serve. In fact, he was richer as a merchant before prophethood. He died with his shield in collateral with a Jew. When Umar entered in his room, he started to cry because he found that the Prophet was living on a rough mat that left marks on his body. His wife said that sometimes a month and 2 would pass by without a single cooked meal, and he could have had the whole world at his fingertip. So the mission of the Prophet was not to get people serving. He was serving them, and he lived and died as the simplest poor. In fact, he used to pray, oh God, make me live as poor, die as poor, and make me in the day of judgment resurrect in the company of the poor. As far as the question of forgiveness, it is amply in the Quran. فَمَنْ عَفَى وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُ عَلَيْهِ. Whoever forgives and make peace, his reward is with Allah. وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ تُدْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Good and evil are not to be equated. Repel evil with good. Yes, the Quran gives the opportunity for retaliation when it works, when it's needed. But in the meantime, it always says, if you forgive, it is better. So I just wanted to clarify that issue, that it is not really that difference or gap that you might be thinking about. It's just in the context of the universality of Islam and the comprehensiveness of its teaching to deal with varieties of situations.
I didn't want to intimate that there is not the notion of service in the Quran, because I think that would be wrong. What I was trying to say there was that the service to which Jesus was committed was a service unto becoming a ransom. That is not the Council of Nicaea. This is in the New Testament. And Jesus deliberately did not raise his hand against his enemies. It was in the face of his enemies that Jesus was silent and prayed for their forgiveness. And when the disciples raised a sword, Peter used a sword to try and protect Jesus. Jesus says, put it down. I could summon a host of angels to come and deliver me. So my point was that the humiliation of Jesus, becoming a victim of his enemies, this was a deliberate demonstration on the part of Jesus. He would not destroy them. He was there to love them and give his life.
Even here I find an area of similarity, because we have to understand it also in the context in which Jesus came. Here even his closest followers, according to the New Testament, ran away when he was arrested. Had he known that those people could stand up to the tyrannical power of the Roman empires, God knows, how can we tell now that he would have not fought? Secondly, I say that also as not a gap between Muslims and Christians, because Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, under similar circumstances, never lifted a hand against his enemy, not for 3 years, I repeat again, for 13 years. That was the context of the situation under which he lived.